Thanks again for joining us this evening. Let's get started. We have a full list of things we want to talk about tonight. Anytime during the meeting that you would like to ask a question, please feel free to just type it into the chat. There are 3 of us on the call tonight, and between us, we'll try to get to your answers. If we don't have an answer, we promise we'll get back to you. Okay, so let me introduce our team first. We have with us tonight Brian Jones, Dr. Brian Jones. Brian is our psychometrician. He's been with us, I think, almost 2 years now. And we'll be talking about the results from the EoC, how to interpret them, what you're actually seeing when you look at the scale score. We also have with us Dr. Denise Mutlu. Denise is our Senior Vice President and has been with PLTW for several years. Denise, 3 or 4 years now? 3 maybe. And I'm Terry Osmond. I'm the Director of the Assessment Experience, and I've been with PLTW almost 7 years and in assessment for 5 years. So let me tell you what we're going to talk about tonight. And again, remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. So we're going to talk first about PLTW assessments just a little bit generally, maybe what you would call the value proposition. We're going to talk about how they're created, how we make sure, or how maybe you make sure that they continue to hold value for various stakeholders. We're going to talk about using the test for college credit. We're going to talk about some new developments in our system of assessments this year, including a recently published paper on college and career readiness. We'll talk about how to make sure you have a successful administration, how to understand what you're seeing on the score reports, and about using the informative assessment tool, which you will hear us refer to as the IAT. First, let's talk about how we make the test. We actually do start with the course framework. It's really important to us that the EoCs are closely aligned to the curriculum that you're offering in any PLTW course. So we start with the course framework. If you are not familiar with these course frameworks, they're available to anyone, any teachers, in your teacher resources within your course. We take the objectives from the course framework, move them into skill cluster sets, and you'll see those on the test blueprint. If you're not familiar with the test blueprint, know that you can look these up. There are links in the assessment manual to a test blueprint for each one of the EoCs that's offered. And in the test blueprint, you'll see the skill cluster name here in the left-hand column. You'll see the frameworks from the framework objectives, and then you'll see the weight of this skill cluster on the test. We think it's really important that the scores that you offer, that your students get from this assessment, are unbiased scores. To do that, we're going to ask for that you help us make sure we have standard administrations. Part of that is that we only test one student, each student only tests once a year. Sometimes that's, if you're block courses, that may be at the end of a semester, maybe December, January. If you're a full year course, it will probably be in May. About 10% of our tests are delivered before January, February area, and the rest of them in May and June. Each assessment can be taken in 2 sessions. Each session lasts 1 class period, and both sessions can be combined on a single day, or you can take them 2 separate days. I think it's really important and hard for me to describe, Brian would be much better at this part, that we use item response theory. The tests are calibrated to make sure that as students take them, like your students that took them last year and the students that take them this year, even though they're going to have different items, they will have the same difficulty level. Their score will represent the same level of ability, whether they took them last year or this year, even though they have different items. To do that, we use item response theory calibration. One of the challenges in that is that we can't just write an item and turn it loose. So it does take us almost a year from the time we understand that there's been a change in the curriculum until we have new items to represent that. For those of you that are teaching POE, that's why we have a test available right now for the legacy version, and we won't have a test available for the new POE course until May. Also, our items may be reused. That means we protect them, and we ask you to protect them really carefully. They're not going to be reused the next year, but good items are hard to develop and cost a lot to develop. So we want to be able to reuse them. So we don't release items. The items that you see in the informative assessment tool will eventually represent retired items. Right now, they are items that were written by the same people at the same time that EoC items were being written. So that's the standard administration. We want to make sure that all the students get the same amount of time on the test, or at least the minimum amount of time, which is 50 minutes per section. We administer in reduced testing windows, and we use item response theory calibration. We also protect access to the test. This is one of the things we do to make sure that the items are still usable the next time we put them out there. Part of that is that each session is pre-authorized. So when you complete a roster, when you put a roster in your course, that will be sent over to Kite. And as soon as there's a test there, that's why you don't have authorizations yet, because the tests haven't been published yet. But you will get an assignment for that test. Each student will get an assignment based on the fact that they've been rostered in your class. We also use daily access codes. Those are there to protect that test. The daily access code will be available to you the day before you're ready to give the test. It changes every day. It's a different access code for each section of the test, and it's required for the student when they log in before they get access to those test questions. We also have an automated timeout on the test. That's really important, and we're going to try really hard to be very fair about the way we administer that timeout and the reactivation request this year. That means that if a student gets timed out, which happens, by the way, after 90 minutes of inactivity on the test, and you call and say, could you reactivate it? It could take up to 2 weeks to get that reactivation process this year. So be really careful. Make sure when a student starts the test that they have the full 50 minutes to finish that section, because reactivations aren't easy, and they aren't easy because we're helping you and you're helping us to protect that access to the test. So why do we do all this? Why do we care so much about standardized administration? One of the reasons that it's become even more important this year is because of the increase in use of our EoC scores for college credit. You know, it's hard for students sometimes to understand the value of college credit. When you're talking to a high school student, they really just want to get to the basketball game and get to the classes the next day sometimes. So we would encourage you to talk to the students about the value of that college credit. They may not know their freshman year, they may not know their senior year if they're going to college next year. But for every 3 hours that they earn, it's reasonable to believe they're going to save 90 hours of their time in their freshman year of college. It's really possible to think of how many hours they're going to save. If it's a classroom hour, how many hours would that course take? That'd take 45 hours of their time for 3 credits. And that means they could save 135 hours for one of their 3-hour courses. Time is maybe more important than money to college students. I think the parents probably are more interested right now in this next slide, and that's how much money it can save. We did just some quick sort of back of the napkin type calculations to see how much money 3 credit hours would be worth, whether you were talking a public 2-year in-district, public 4-year in-state, public 4-year out-of-state, or maybe even a private nonprofit 4-year. It's reasonable to believe that a 3-hour course is worth somewhere between $500 and $5,000 for a student. So even if they're not sure if they're going to want that college credit, please make sure your students have the opportunity to sit for the EoC So if they decide 3 years later that they want college credit, they'll have that score to go back on. Also, it's important to us that the EoC is easy for you to use. We know you've got a lot of things going on in your classrooms. So there's a network and device setting that will be important for students to be able to get into the EoC. It does require a secure browser. Note that this year it's Kite 4.0. If you don't have Kite 4.0 installed on your student testing devices, talk to your district staff about that and make sure you get that upgraded before the EoC starts. There are some firewall settings that need to be configured in a certain way. More information about this is available in the admin manual or on our website, PLTW.org-software. And just give it to your district staff and they'll I think they'll take care of it for you. Also, within the classroom, the admin manual this year is only about 32 pages, I think, reduced significantly from the 169 pages it was 5 years ago. That admin manual is meant to be user-friendly. There's a table of contents that is linked to the information inside. You should be able to quickly go to the information you need and get it from the admin manual, but take a look at it before the test starts, obviously. If you're in a testing situation and you need help right now, call the Solution Center. We have people there 24/7 waiting to help, and they are the nicest people. I put their number on the screen. You probably have that on a little scrap of paper somewhere on your desk. They're fabulous people. Call them if you need them. Also, if you're going to need an accommodated testing form, a hard copy accommodated testing form for any of your students, those need to be requested as much as 6 weeks in advance. Send us an email at PLTW Assessments at PLTW.org and let us know. We will send you a DocuSign form. We do that because we don't want you needing to put student name or ID number in an email because that's not secure. So we'll use DocuSign forms to collect information, and we'll make sure that form gets to you the week before your test is to be administered. Again, our expectation is this should not be a challenge for you to administer. If it is, give us a call and let us help. There is an assessment readiness check. This is on your MyPLTW site. And what this tells you is that your student has completed all of the student profile requirements and the roster has been sent to Kite. This should be automatic from this point. Once the roster has been sent to Kite, it will come back to you. The assessment will be marked as ready. You can see in this little sample down here in the lower right-hand side, there's check marks under the student name. There's check marks beside the student, and it will tell you even what's missing. So if you look at this first row, this student may be missing their date of birth. If you want to edit that yourself, you can do it. Click on the little pencil icon over here, and you can edit their account, or you can tell the student to go into their MyPLTW account and edit it. Real quickly, this would be a good time for me to mention the reason we ask the students to provide date of birth, gender, race, ethnicity, is because we do a lot of work on the back end in statistical analysis. It's really important to us that these tests are fair and not biased against any subgroup. To do that, we need to know what subgroups we're looking at. It will not impact their score in any way. It's for us to make sure that things are working the way they are supposed to be working. If you have any questions about the assessment readiness check, there's a document that'll give you more information. It's linked from within the admin manual, or you can click on that little QR code right there. We will send out a copy of the slide deck and a recording after the call, so you'll have this available if it will help. Another thing that you might want to do before the test starts is download the usernames and passwords for all your students. Now, I hope they will have been using these usernames and passwords for a while as they were taking the informative assessment tests, the quizzes that you were helping them get ready with. But it's important that you know that although their Kite username may be the same for accessing the course and for accessing Kite, the password will be different. The password that your student uses to get into their course is not passed to Kite. So the password for Kite will be a different password. When you print these out, well, you don't have to print them out. You can get them in a CSV file if you'd rather, or you can print them out in these little tickets. Be really careful if you use these tickets. Make sure you don't give the ticket to the wrong student. It has their name on it. It has their username, their password, their course name. Be really careful if you're going to use the paper that the right student gets the right paper. Whoops, I let my cursor wander. There we go. Daily access codes. I mentioned these briefly before. This is a real important part of protecting the test to make sure that it stays secure. We will ask you to read a security agreement and agree to it. Part of what you're reading is saying that you've had the training that you need and you feel comfortable giving this test. If you don't, call us ahead of time. We want to help. Allowable materials. I'm not going to read the list. It's in the admin manual. But the big thing to remember is that students can use their own calculator. There is one on screen, but it does take up screen real estate. Most students prefer to use their own calculator. Scratch paper, we don't think they'll need it, but it's kind of like a security blanket. Some students just really want to have scratch paper. If you're going to provide it, please give them fresh paper. Please collect it at the end of the test. We want to make sure that if they did happen to copy down an item, that it doesn't leave with them in that format. Also, the engineering formula sheets are available for students in the engineering classes. They're available on screen, but again, that takes screen real estate. You are certainly welcome to provide them printed copies of the PDF that's available. I think it's available in your course, and I know it's available through a link in the admin manual. Also, quick reminder, don't let them use their cell phones. Cell phones today are so incredibly powerful. If that's where their calculator is, find another calculator for them or have them use it on screen. Same thing with smartwatches. We don't want anything that is going to risk that somebody could take a picture of an item that's on screen, which is a really good time to remind you, don't take any pictures of the items on the screen. We would actually prefer that teachers not look at the test. It helps protect the test if you don't look at it. With that said, we know sometimes students come to you and they say, it's not working, it's not working. And you need to look at the screen to know if it's working, if it's student error. So if you need to look at it, look at it. If you need to tell us about it, call the Solution Center first because it's time sensitive. But you can send us an email. Don't send us a screenshot. Don't send us a picture. We don't want those going through email. So I've talked a lot about the assessment manual. You can tell it's my baby. There's a lot of material in it. It's only 30 pages. There is a video in there of the student experience that we think that your students would appreciate seeing before they ever use an informative assessment. And there's course-specific blueprints. There's a sample score report. There's information for requesting accommodated test forms. And here's the QR code to get to the assessment manual. Real quickly, I wanted to show you what a student view of Kite looks like. I will talk a lot about the toolbar. This toolbar is where they can find their calculator. It's where they can possibly use strikeout. They could use notes. I don't know why anybody ever would. Some students like this. Don't let the first time they see this toolbar be the day of the EoC. Make sure they've seen it first because you don't want them wasting time trying to figure out how to use the tools on the toolbar. And there is a little caret right here in the middle on the left-hand side of the screen that will make that toolbar go away if the student finds it distracting. One other thing we want to make sure that they know about, this center bar on their screen allows them to size the screen. Some students want to see a little bit. They want to see the scenario, which is on the left, but they've read it once. They really want to focus on the items. All they have to do is click on that bar and move it to the left or the right, and they can size the screen real time as they're taking the test. Okay, so now we've got some cool new things going on. Denise is going to talk to you about those. So I will turn talking over to you for a couple minutes. Dr. Mutlu, it's yours.
Thanks, Terry. All right. So some of the new developments we're excited about that we'd like to share with you. First, for many of you who may or may not know that for several years now, we've had our partner, University of Kansas, design and develop and administer the exams for well over several years now. And in due time, we have transitioned on to a new vendor. Um, Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself, so I apologize. I'm looking at the screen, so I completely sorry. Let me start with the more exciting news of ACE, actually. ACE is, we're really excited. Over the past year or so, we've examined some of our high school courses. And for those of you who may not familiar, American Council on Education is a group that reviews for accreditation and works with higher ed institutions to award or recommend credit for any of the courses similar to College Board AP and CLEP programs. And what they do is they review the course content, the curriculum, and make an evaluation, make a recommendation on what is appropriate for first and second year college courses. So we partnered with ACE this past year to have these 7 high school courses review, as well as the end of course exams. And after the review, which took about several months, ACE came back to say that we have been awarded credit, and ACE recommended that students who take any of these 7 high school courses and receive at least the minimum of accomplished on the end of course assessment, that their recommended credit is 3 credits per course. We do have some other courses that are in the works, such as Engineering Essentials and IED, that are scheduled next for review, but we wanted to start out with these 7 courses first. And a list of that is available on the ACE National Guide website. For more information and more communication will be shared. And again, just want to mention that although we have worked on other computer science programs, our computer science courses are recognized by AP, and there are plenty of universities and colleges that also award credit, even if it's not one of the 1,600 colleges listed in the A. So there's always opportunities for our students to earn college credit. The next development, which I started out with, really excited about. For years, as I mentioned, University of Kansas has been a leader in helping us develop our end of course assessments. But we've transitioned to the Council for Aid to Education. They really are a leader in innovative performance tasks. They work with some of the largest school districts around the country. They design great content, and we are very excited with them. So a new vendor, a new content provider for our EOCs. And we're hoping that with our new vendor that we could open the doors for possibilities of several different item types in the future years, as well as some additional means of add-ons to our end of course, all slated for in the very near future. But Council will provide us PLTW with our assessment design, content development, and all of the statistical analysis for our end of course assessments. And lastly, the new development, don't want to confuse that, even though we have a new vendor, a new partner for our content and our psychometrics, we are still utilizing University of Kansas Kite platform for administration, and that will continue to be our test development platform for a few years now. We are, some of the updates that PLTW, the Kite has made is that we're transitioning over to 4.0 that will be required for the 23-24 school year. And some of the new developments consisting in the informative assessment tool is that we've had added item rationale so that the students can identify why they got the question wrong or right, and it is an explanation for each of the item sets. So that's really exciting news and gives it a more true formative value for both the student and for the teacher. Okay, next slide. So We have also new this year, we have had the great pleasure of working, we engaged with our leading expert in the arena of college and career readiness, Dr. David Conley, who also happens to be a member of our PLTW Technical Advisory Committee. Actually, Dr. Conley spoke at our annual summit last year in Orlando, and we're really excited to have partnered with him to conduct this study. He is very well known in the industry around college and career readiness. And what the study did was analyze the content knowledge as well as the transportable skills that are listed in the high school courses, as well as the end of course assessments, using a model that Dr. Conley developed that has been recognized among thousands of universities and higher ed industry, called the 4 Keys to College and Career Readiness. And those are career readiness elements that have really been impactful, and we've used those to align or to look to see and compare how our courses align or compare rather to these set of elements, and what students need to know in order to be prepared for post-secondary institutions. And so the goal really was, the study was, we wanted to look to see how well we claim the message that our students are being prepared for college and career readiness. Now let's find out how well they are being prepared by using this set of 4 keys, and wanted to see how we can continue to make improvements within the program and updates to curriculum along the way. So this is a valuable value that this study provided for us. On the next slide, you'll see here, these are the 4 domains of the 4 keys. And what they really are is, and these are the elements that was used to make the comparison across the courses and the assessments. And the 4 keys to college and career readiness is sort of bundled up into the think, know, act, grow. And the think part is what you see, the key cognitive strategies, and those are asking questions around the students of what problem am I trying to solve, or where can I find the information I need. The second part is the know, and that's really on the key content knowledge, right? Do I understand the point of what I'm learning and how it fits with what I already know? The third element of the 4 keys is called key learning strategies, and that's the part of the act, right? Do I approach learning with curiosity and find ways to work toward my goals in different situations? And the fourth element of the 4 keys is called key transition knowledge, or the go part, and that's the part of career exploration. How will I navigate the process necessary to move forward from my high school to career and post-secondary? And in looking at these four areas, we have, and the next slide, thanks, Sarah. We've identified that the 25 elements that was used to compare the courses and the EoC with, and it was determined that there have been variable levels of emphasis within those 24 elements. And within each course, we've identified between 4 and 18 elements that really were highly aligned to those 4 keys. There are some items that naturally would not be able to fit within the construct of the elements, because those are the types of elements that you would see traditionally using a portfolio or a peer evaluation type, and it was not easily accessible in a standardized format. However, though, the findings were really positive, and we found that it does validate our assertion that PLTW, that students who participate in our courses are well prepared and well equipped for college and careers after high school, and that our courses consistently and strongly address all of the elements that the researchers have shown are essential to post-secondary success. And so, and also every course studied addressed almost all or majority of the 4 keys and college readiness elements, because, and that is actually a remarkable find, because our assessments were not designed, nor our courses were designed to align specifically using the 4 keys model when we set out to develop them. But we have found out that they cover more than half of the 4 keys showcased. And for those who would want to read the full, we have the study available. We have our QR code here. This is a study that, as I mentioned, conducted by researchers David Conley and Dr. Mary Seaborn. It's a great study, and we strongly recommend you reading it, talking to your teachers, your school administrators, and really showcasing the value and the research that has been done for this study, so that our courses and our assessments truly do prepare our students for college and career readiness. So that's been really exciting, and the work that we've done. And I think I'm going to turn it over now to Brian to talk about some of the score reports here.
Yeah, I love this slide here that talks that the picture of the students and EoC assessment results. And the reason why I like having the picture of the students here and as an intro to talking about the assessment results is because ultimately, like, this is all about the students, right? And if we don't understand the results, then it kind of it all gets lost, right? And one of the things that I hope you can take away from the few slides and few minutes that I'm going to talk about today is how you can present and the results and talk about the results to your students so that they can recognize the achievement that they're getting when they take a PLTW course and they take the EoC assessment and they get those results back. Some of the things that we've heard in different settings, you know, and I don't know how common these things are, but you know, one of the things that's important, I think, to understand is that there's not a fail on the EoC. Students don't fail the EoC, and actually, one of the things that I'll mention, we'll talk about the achievement level descriptors a little bit later, but just off the bat, you know, it's really not expected that all students are going to be scoring at the highest achievement level. The way that we've designed this assessment and the way that we want to provide an opportunity for all students to demonstrate their ability on the EoC, just by nature makes it so that, you know, it's not one of those tests where, you know, if not all your students are getting distinguished, you should feel really bad. It's if you have a handful of students that are getting distinguished, that's a great reason to celebrate. So anyway, I'll move into some of the more detailed part of my explanation here. I do want to point out here, if you're not familiar with the Understanding EoC Results document, this link and QR code will take you to that, and you can download it. This document is basically what I'm going to talk about right now, the highlights from there. Understanding what the test is and the nature of it being as a standardized test, how it's scored, and the results that are produced and how you can interpret those. So we're going to hit the high level aspects of that now, and then if you want to get into the details, you can look into that document, and always you can reach out to the Solution Center. They're great folks that know their stuff, and if you stump them, then they reach out to us and we'll help you out. So we'll have you covered if you have any questions. So Terry, let's go to the next slide here. One of the things that's important to understand about the results and also just the nature of the EoC is that it's an aligned summative assessment. So Terry mentioned at the beginning that we start out with the course frameworks, and then the blueprints are created based off of the frameworks. And this whole approach is what we call is an aligned approach in the assessment industry. And basically, you know, the way that I describe that is that we focus on the key skills and content of the course, and then the students are assessed on those key skills and content in the assessment. Now, there is a slight distinction here that I think sometimes there's some confusion between something that is aligned and something that's extracted. So, you know, back when I was a student, it was the end of chapter questions. And those end of chapter questions, it was like for most of them, some books were better than others, but for most classes, you could pick up the key word and then just go scan through the chapter. And it's like, oh, that is the key word. And oh, wow, that whole sentence in the chapter is the question. I had an interesting experience with my daughter who's in high school, and she has a digital textbook now, and they had the end of chapter questions. And we got stumped, and all that you could do is just do a search, and you can find the answer in the chapter. So that's not the experience that we're aiming for with the EoC, and not what you should expect when you see the question. So sometimes students are a little bit taken, if they're expecting that extracted experience, and then they get to the EoC, they realize, oh wait, I know this topic and I know this content, but it's presented in a little bit of a different way. So it's important, remember at the very beginning, we talked about how this is for the students, is to help them understand that they might experience questions that cover the content that they know and they understand and that they've mastered, but it might be presented in a slightly different way. And part of that is a level of complexity, and helps demonstrate how well they've understood and mastered the content. So we do try to keep the context similar, so it's not completely foreign. We're not trying to create foreign experiences to them, but they need to make sure that they understand that it's not that extracted type of a situation. And the last thing I'll say to that too, as a former teacher, and as you're thinking about preparing your students for the EoC, this also hopefully brings some reassurance to you in preparing your students for the EoC, so that it's not like, what are these very specific things that I have to teach and make sure they understand in order for them to be successful on the EoC. It's really the broad general context of the course, and then and you can look in the blueprint as well to get a little bit of a better idea. But really, if you do a good job covering the material, the students should do well on the EoC. So let's go to the next slide here and talk about our achievement level descriptors. So on your assessment results, the score reports, the students, one of the things that they're going to get is they're going to get classified in one of these 4 achievement level descriptors. And for time's sake, I'm not going to read through all of them and talk about the differences between them. But as you move to the right here, up to the distinguished, it introduces an expectation that students are being able to understand the material and apply it in different contexts. And it's that more advanced understanding of the material. And like I said before too, if you look at that and you think about what a student who would fall into that category might look like, that's not going to be all students. And so having a good distribution of students along the achievement level descriptors is not a bad thing. When it comes to comparing results from course to course, using the achievement level descriptor is the preferred method of making those comparisons. And I'll explain a little bit more in a minute why that is. But let me just mention what that might look like. So if you're teaching multiple courses, so if you're an engineering teacher and you teach engineering essentials and introduction to engineering design and maybe some other courses, what you wouldn't want to do is look at the scores from each one of those and compare them. You would want to look at how many students are in the different categories to give you a good estimate of how well your students are doing in mastering the content across the different courses. So a student who's distinguished in one course, they've mastered the content of that course to the level of the description there. And then students who are distinguished in another, they've mastered that content of the course to the level of the description. So although courses may vary in difficulty or complexity, again, it's how well they've applied the principles in those courses at these levels. The last thing I'll say here is, I've probably already said too much, but I love this stuff, is there is something that's called standard setting. And so you might think, well, how do you decide like what scores go where and how you put students? There's actually there's a very involved process. And if you want to fall asleep, Terry always makes the joke, you'll sleep with this under your pillow. But if you want something to really put you to sleep, unless you're me for some reason, you can read about standard setting and all the methods there. But we take experts and teachers and bring people together. We look at the test and the questions and look at scores and how well students are doing. And we come up with those cut scores so we know, we decide where, how well students have to do on the test to fall into the categories. So that's enough, I think, on achievement level descriptors. Here with our scale scores, this is an important part here because it's something I don't think a lot of people think about and talk about, and it may be even a little counterintuitive for some. But this first bullet point mentions that the scale score is unique per course. And so in this example I give on the slide here, a 380 in MI is not necessarily the same as a 380 in PBS. And that's because we have a different set of items, we have a different level of difficulty and number of hard items and easy items and items in between. And when we use the item response theory methods like Terry mentioned before, it actually factors in the difficulty of the item and other characteristics, and it factors in which items the student got right and which ones they got wrong to generate that scale score, which represents our estimation of their ability. And all of that is specific to the context of a course. So that's why before when I said if you're going to make comparisons from one course to the next, it's a good idea to use the achievement level descriptors. But to the second bullet point here, if you're going to make comparison within a single course, like from year to year, you very much can use those numbers and encourage you to. We go to great lengths and other assessment and test development methods that will put you to sleep on equating to make sure that the scores from previous years and the current year are the same so that you can track and see how well you're doing and you can make those comparisons within a course. So that's, if you want to learn more, then you can look at the understanding scores document or reach out to us. Terry, let's go to the next slide. Okay, oh, that was it. I thought I had more. I must have said it all. Maybe I'll just pause here then, I guess, and see if anything that I've said up to this point, or Terry or Denise, has sparked any questions or thoughts. Anything that you guys have on your mind up to this point. You can either unmute and talk, or you can put it in the chat.
I have two questions for you. On the last slide, you talked about, it said that the scores are influenced by which items are answered correctly or incorrectly. What do you mean by that?
Yes, so it's different than just taking like a % of the questions that you got right. So sometimes in a lot of classroom assessment, they got 80% of the questions right, they get an 80 on the test. It can get really detailed here, but the high level is that the characteristics of the item, so how difficult is the easiest one to describe. So if an item is really, really hard, then that's going to impact their score a little bit more or differently than if they get it right than if they get an easy one right. The other thing and the way that the different items impact the score is what items they get right and which ones they get wrong. So a student who gets a couple hard ones right but gets all of the easy one wrong, that's going to influence their score in a different way. And I'll hold back. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, and my other question is specific to the college credit and the ACE alignment. And you have principles of engineering on that list. I'm curious what form of principles of engineering was involved, given that we have legacy POE and we have the POE that's currently released and the one that is going to be released. What are they aligning to with it in flux?
Very good question. When we conducted the evaluation, we used what was currently or the legacy principles of engineering, and we looked to see what was the changes that occurred within the new structure of the test. So it's the new POE, not. I mean, I know we confuse ourselves, but it is the legacy course that was reviewed and in order to award the credit. So it is the course that is not the new course, but it is the current course out there for a legacy.
And Denise, although that's the one that's reviewed, students that are taking the new POE now will still fall under the ACE recommendation.
Correct.
Well, so how much does that potentially change as updates are made to that course and other courses in general? Does that have to be renewed at some point or relooked at?
It does, yes. If there's a course that's, I mean, what they said is if there's a course that's been more than 50% changes or even more, greater than about 40% changes that have been made to a course, then ACE reevaluates those course updates and make sure that the credit recommendations are still intact. So any changes to any of the course that is a major course revision, ACE will periodically make those, and ACE reviews those courses on an annual basis as well, because those credits are continuous every year. But to your point, if there's been drastic or major changes, usually over greater than 40%, then ACE will conduct another review.
I apologize for flipping through the slides. I don't know how to quickly get back to where we were. Sorry.
And again, on the ACE too, I mean, it has been an organization that we worked with because there were a lot of questions. Sometimes we would get fielded through our partnership team and with higher ed about what was your recommended credit. And we really did not have guidance on that. We said we allowed the institutions to decide based on what they felt were appropriate from the higher ed institutions, where they could review the curriculum and the end of course assessments to make that determination. But we went with the approach of ACE to help solidify some of those questions and queries where higher ed institutions were coming to us for guidance on what is that course? What is that recommended credit? So we wanted to work with ACE, a recognized institution like ACE, to help set that policy. And it is a recommendation. It is completely up to the colleges and universities to decide whether or not they agree with the recommendations set forth by ACE. And even if an institution is not recognized within the ACE listed of colleges and universities, there are still colleges that do award credit. So it's always encouraging for you all to talk to your students and encourage them, as well as to parents, that these courses and the successful completion of the course, along with the EOCs, do permit students to apply for college credit and recognition.
And then I see one question in the chat about, I'm faster at talking than typing, about pre-assessment. And that's some feedback that we've received from teachers. We've also had feedback about the possibility for unit tests and study guides and practice tests for the EOC that are more closely aligned to the question types and experience that they'll have there. And so we're considering a lot of those things for future development. One of the things that already exists and is a nice segue into what we're going to talk about next is the informative assessment tool. And Terry's great at talking about this, but the IAT is an option for giving a pre-assessment or trying to get a sense for how much your students know before, at the beginning of the year, before you go through and reach the end and take the EOC. So I'll be quiet and I'll let Terry talk about the IAT.
Brian's right. I do love talking about it. I really think it's a valuable tool. We have over 1,200 items in the item bank for the informative assessment tool, split between different courses, split between different units within a course, and you can curate your own exam. You can pick the item blocks that you want to use to administer. The informative assessment tool is not a secure testing device. Students don't have to have the installed browser. They can go to an internet-based browser to take the informative assessments. They can take them at home. They can take them with their friends. It sounds like I'm starting a Dr. Seuss book, doesn't it? But I think that the value of the informative assessment is initially that it lets students practice on the Kite platform. Certainly don't let them hit that Kite platform for the very first time on the day of their high stakes test, the EoC. But other than that, there is some good content in this. We don't have studies, which both Brian and Denise would advocate for, that would show the predictive validity of these assessments. But they are great tools to talk to your students about. Many of them do show students how to use higher order thinking. Brian mentioned the alignment versus, what was it, Brian? Alignment versus
Extracted.
The thing that you'll find in the EoCs is that we expect students to use the information they've got and apply it to a new scenario. Students may not be used to that in a setting, in a testing environment. So show them the questions in the IAT to help them get used to that approach to it. So I'm going to quickly talk to you about how to use the IAT just because I want you to see it. It really is pretty easy to use, but some people like videos better than demos or talking or writing. You'll notice the QR code on this slide. There's also a link there that will take you to a 5-minute video that will talk about how to use the informative assessment tool, and we'll give it a lot more power-packed information than what I'm going to cover right now. Okay, so how do you design your quiz? You need to get into the educator portal. You do that from your My PLTW account. You'll notice up here on the top right-hand side, your role will be listed, your organization, which is probably your district, and the assessment program will always be PLTW. This is a role-based assessment. It's a role-based tool. So you will be going in through your My PLTW. It knows what classes you teach and what rosters you have. So if you're going to build an interim assessment, an IAT, you're going to go to this middle tab here on the first page in the educator portal, which is called interim, and you're going to click on build or copy a test. Oh, I'm moving my cursor around and I'll get there. There we go. The next thing you're going to do is select your course. There's a drop-down box there that will have just the courses that you are authorized in, that you're credentialed in by PLTW. You also have to have a roster. If you're credentialed in a course but you don't have a roster listed in your PLTW course, students listed in the roster, your course won't show up here. So you select your course from the drop-down menu, hit the search button, and when you hit search, it will bring up a list of item blocks that are available for that course. You'll see the number of items listed in each item block and an overall explanation of what this particular block is about. What you don't see in this picture, because we've just added it fairly recently, is that we do have in many of the courses unit-based quizzes. We heard from teachers quite a bit that although the topics are interesting, it's really important to them to have something that ties to the unit that they've just finished with the students or that they're just getting ready to go into. So this is where you'll select those. You can select one block or several blocks. You just select it by clicking in the little box there and it will highlight it to blue. Once you've selected it, you probably will want to see what that block is talking about. What is it testing over? There's a little button at the bottom of that page that says content assessed. You'll see my green arrow there on the left-hand side. You click that content assessed and it will bring you up to the frameworks that block represents. You're probably then going to want to look at the items in that block. Now, you don't have to do any of this. You can just assign them all blindly if you want to, but we found that most teachers want to look at the items first, and some teachers choose to use this as a projection that they put up on screen and they talk to the students about them. You can let them take the quiz first and then talk to them about them. Or you can put them up and just talk to them about it from here. One of the other things that we heard is if you're going to project them, you may not want the right answer already identified on the screen when you start to project it. There is a new feature this year that will let you deselect the right answer. So you see the little green check mark by 0.70 moderate obstruction. If you don't want any check marks on yours, on your screen, you can deselect that in the preview mode. Then you're going to configure your quiz. You do that by checking the boxes beside the units, the blocks that you want to move down. And then you hit add. You see the add button there sort of in the middle of the page. It will move that block from available tests up at the top down to selected tests. When you have all of the quiz blocks that you want in that quiz, click on save. Then you're ready to assign it. Within the interim items, within the interim tab, go to the assign test block, select to find the test name. It's the name that you just gave it, right? And highlight that. And then you go down here, you see where the arrow is at the bottom of the page where it says assign tests. There's two ways to assign them. You can assign the quiz that you just selected to all of your students in your roster or to specific students. You're welcome to use this. If you want to use it as a pre-test, post-test, you're welcome to use it that way. You can assign the same test multiple times to your class. You may assign it to students, and there may be one or two students that really need to think about what they're doing a little bit more. So you may want to go ahead and assign it only to specific students. So you select using that little box down there by the green arrow, whether you're going to apply it to everybody in the roster or just to the specific students. They will complete the test in their Kite portal. And again, because it's the IAT, it does not need to be in the secure browser. They can find that. And if you need the link for that, by the way, I bet you're going to guess this ahead of time. It's in the assessment manual, the admin manual. That link is. So this is what the student will see after each unit. Now you see on this one, it says no rationales. That's a setting that I chose when I created this quiz, that I did not want the rationales to show. But we also heard from teachers that it's good that students know if they got it right or not, but sometimes they want to use it as a self-teaching tool. And if students want to learn independently, you may want to turn on the rationales. If they do that, when they answer a question, a rationale will pop up that will tell them if they got it right. And it will also tell them if they got it wrong. And if they got it wrong, it will give them some additional points to consider. If you have rationales turned on, students can go back and forth between them multiple times. In the interest of time, I'm just going to tell you that the test results the teacher sees in this are very, very rich. My favorite is the test summary report. If you look at this test summary report, it will tell you by student name, how they scored. Look at column O and you'll see what scores all of your students got. You can sort each column. And there's a quick reference guide if you should want it. So I know that you all love what we've talked about tonight, and some of you have time, or maybe not time because teachers never have extra time, but a real strong interest in what's going on in the assessment, and you'd really like to be part of making these assessments even better. We're looking for EoC Teacher Advisory Group members. If you're interested in test design, item review, helping us field test items, evaluation of field tested items, or even a standard setting, we'd love to hear from you. There's our general email address, PLTW Assessment at pltw.org. Send us a resume or just send us a note telling us you're interested. We'd love to talk to you. And I'm going to close tonight with something that we've heard that we absolutely love. And my first 2 years with PLTW were as a director of school engagement, and I got to actually visit classrooms. And I love this. When you walk into a classroom, you just know. You know the students are engaged. You know the students are learning. You see them practicing transportable skills. You can feel it. As a teacher, you've seen it, you know it, you live it. Sometimes you need some data points to tell people who can't join your classroom that your students have learned, are learning, are engaging, are addressing transportable skills. we would suggest that the EoC gives you these data points. Use it, love it, call us if you need help.